information.
Okay.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Terry Kole, who is the exhibiting artist at the Greenville Public Library for the month of October. Terry is an illustrator and an art teacher living and working on the shores of the Narragansett Bay. Her career has taken her pretty much all over the place, kind of many places, starting in the industrial city of Detroit, where she had her own cartoon strip and was a daily illustrator for the Detroit News, to some of the most beautiful cities in Europe, Brussels, Paris, Amsterdam, Vienna. She illustrated college level books used around the world while in Brussels, created infographics while in New York City for the Associated Press, everything from plane crashes to terrorist attacks. So we'll get into that and all the work you did there. And now you spend a lot of your time illustrating children's books and teaching the next generation of artists at the Plymouth Center for the Arts in historic Plymouth. So you're a jack of many trades, many different mediums, and we'll go through those as well. But you are an artist for hire, so you like to make the author's visions come to life in your books, and you do your children's book illustrations old school. So you'll have to give us a little overview on that, what that means exactly. But so acrylic on watercolor paper. And so, yeah, let's get right into it with questions, and we can go over all your different mediums, and you can share with us some of your art in real time if that works for you. So welcome.
Thanks for having me on this dreary, rainy day.
I know, this dreary day. We're going Zoom interview this time, so we're trying something new. Very excited. So I guess we can start right off the bat. I mean, I gave a little introduction there, but if there's anything else you'd like to add, talk a little bit about yourself and the work that you're going to be showing at the library this month.
Well, at the library, I'll stick with just my children's book illustrations because nobody really wants to see subway cars bombed and how sarin gas affects the human body, right? Or hair transplants. Nobody really wants these things. Though I also do love to do portraits of people and animals, but I'm absolutely loving illustrating children's books because you can explore all kinds of different ways of doing your artwork. There are almost like scientifically accurate children's books. And then there are children's books that might have taken the artist all of a week to do because their lines are so fast and so simple and it's so colorful what they throw at it. And I want to get there, but I lean more towards the scientifically accurate part.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it shows in your work. Absolutely. It's like the meticulous, like perfection in each of those illustrations. So we can definitely at the library appreciate that. Do you have any like favorite children's book illustrators that you're inspired by?
Yeah. Well, Chris Van Allsburg, of course, the fellow who did the Polar Express and Jumanji and something. I don't think he called it A Secret Garden, but it was a book about a garden where all the bushes were sculptures.
Oh, yes.
I really love his work. There's a fellow named Mark. I'm going to destroy the pronunciation. Buehner, Buehner. He and his wife. So he's the illustrator. His wife is Carolyn Buehner, and they did the Snowmen books. I don't know if you've got them at the library, but yeah. Snowmen at Christmas, snowmen at night, snowmen at work, snowmen all year. And actually, when I was looking at that artwork and I loved it, it's like, this is very reminiscent of something that I used to read to my kids. And sure enough, I read them a book, Maxie. It's not Maxie the Taxi because Maxie's a dog, but he's in a yellow checker cab in New York City. And sure enough, all those years ago, it was him. It was Mark Buehner.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny.
Right? So
your inspiration stuck with you all these years.
Yeah. If I liked it then, I like it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
As a kid, I remember my mom having a few books around, like the Mother Goose books with the very old-fashioned illustrations, and I loved them. And one particular Christmas book about Santa Claus at the North Pole was so incredibly well painted, and every little elf, they all, again, scientifically realistic,
Right.
are elves. I mean, but they looked absolutely like little tiny humans, and the bells on the reindeer's harnesses and things were just so realistic. It took me years, but I did find a copy of it, that was still in print, and so I have it here at the
Oh,
house.
I love that. So starting your collection with those
And
from
I
your
also
roots.
have Jan Brett. I have a lot of her books. Jan is a local artist, actually, in Massachusetts.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I just think she does a fabulous job. She's using, old folk tales for the most part, not
Mhm.
much original writing, which is a great idea. It takes a little bit of pressure off you.
Right,
um,
yes, forget that
but what
part.
I love about her artwork are the frames and the borders that she puts
Yes.
around them. Um, I just think uh, there's so much as a child that you can sit and look at, you know.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and you get these kind of bits of the story outside of the direct, or like maybe these little premonitions about what's to come, and that's always such a fun thing to like explore as a child and as an adult, because you're seeing these things that you may never have noticed upon. You can read it 100 times and notice something different.
Right, right. I used to love, as a child, and it still exists today, Highlights magazine,
Oh,
because
yes,
there's
yeah.
always the page inside of there where it's like, find these 20 things, and you spend
Yes.
a half an hour as a kid, circling everything that you found. And
Right.
I loved all that at the dentist's office.
Yep. So you're a lover of the fine details for sure,
I
which I think is very reflected in your work.
yet I hate as an artist to have to do somebody or a bunch of somebodies in a room. That's like,
Right. On to the second question here. So your father was an automobile designer, which I'm very interested in because I don't think you don't hear that so much. But
not
I
here.
was so yeah, and you say in your website that you realized early that you liked drawing almost everything, just not
Not car.
cars, which I thought was super funny. And so were you introduced to art and design from a young age? Like, how did that overlap with your father's work? So yeah, what was your relationship to art as a child?
Definitely, my father was my first teacher. And actually, by default, I'm number two out of five kids, and my older sister had talent. My father had built a blackboard in the basement, and he would take her downstairs and do all kinds of different drawing lessons on the board. He would draw this, she would try to draw it. And I was left out on the side, just kind of hanging out watching them. And I really, really wanted to be able to draw like them. So I would practice when they weren't looking, whatever it was that was still up on the blackboard. And eventually my dad noticed that I was, artistic too.
Yeah.
So he did spend a little bit of time. And I would say, really, even though he never drew people per se, he was the one who taught me first how to draw people using structure
Yeah.
for their face. Um, and he tried to teach me how to draw cars. As kids growing up, uh, everybody does different things in their families. We made model cars. And
Oh,
so I knew what a turbo combustion engine was before anybody else on my block.
right.
I
Yes,
built it,
absolutely.
painted it, glued it, put it in place. Yeah, and in my family, my father designed cars, my uncle designed cars, then two of my well, I only have two brothers, my two brothers, one designs cars, one designs the electronic computer panels behind the dashboard.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
a little bit different.
So,
He went to college for engineering, and he used it more for the whole computer thing
right.
that we all
Yes.
hate. We all yell at him when we can't fix our own car,
Can't figure it.
you know? So
No,
being
that
in
makes sense.
Detroit, then I worked for a couple of ad agencies. One ad agency was the kind that strictly did those glossy car magazines that come out once a year when the new models come out to show
Yeah.
you, all the beautiful interiors and all the options that you can have. And so, I was just on the team. I wasn't doing anything special other than old jobs back in the day, key lining, making sure the type and the photo lined up and stuff.
Right, everything,
Um,
yeah.
but then during that month, trying to get that magazine out, they worked on it all year, but still, it's like crush time. They actually they expected us to spend the night at the ad agency and just keep working. And I thought, this is boring as all get out. And then I've got to spend the night. It's like,
Right, exactly, yeah.
and not have breakfast and coffee. I mean, come on, So I just did not love that. I did end up with another ad agency that did a lot more fun ads, and that was a blast. But finally, well, I started with a cartoon strip on my own that ran in a very tiny, we say mouse fart newspaper in a little tiny place in Michigan called New Baltimore. And I was there this summer, and I couldn't even find the newspaper. It was called the Anchor Bay Beacon, which will explain why the name of my cartoon is what it was. The editor chose it, and it was called Clem's Classics, because my middle name is Clementine, and he thought that was a hoot. And you have to remember, this is like end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s.
Right,
And
yeah.
they paid me syndicate rates. So they felt they were doing a great job. So in the syndicate back then, so imagine Charlie Brown,
Yeah.
Family Circle, or I don't know, there what were the I can't think of all the titles of the cartoons, Beetle Bailey. Anyways, a lot of these news cartoonists, they come out every day in the newspaper, black and white, and they would do a strip of like 6 squares. And syndicate rates were $5 a square for every newspaper you ended up in. So those guys were making a living.
Right, through every single day, yeah.
I had a regular job and then did the cartoon at home, and I had to write it myself, and I'm not that funny. And I said, how can I do the least amount of work and get paid? So I tried to be funny in 1 square.
Yeah,
and I have some samples, and we can look, because sometimes what was a chuckle then is still a chuckle now.
Right, of course, yeah, the classics. Well, and that's the name. There it is.
Right. So I did that for 5 years, and I would spend maybe 5 hours on this thing, and then I would have to drive an hour to the Anchor Bay Beacon, drop it off, and drive an hour back after work and get $5. And I thought, there has to be a shiny rainbow at the end of this.
Right, yeah, there's got to be something else, yeah.
And the Detroit News, I had a friend who was a reporter there, and she showed the art director my cartoon strip and a few other black and white pieces that I had done, and they gave me a job interview, and they hired me to be a daily illustrator. And that was like definitely a shiny rainbow, because that was definitely way more than $5 a square.
Right, yes. And that's such a, what a cool thing is that. And so from there, I guess
I went to Belgium like everybody.
You went to Belgium. Okay, so we're we're jumping a little.
Yeah, my dreams, but that's not good enough.
But that doesn't work. Yeah. So what happens next in this?
So my mom is from Belgium.
Okay.
And she was an only child, and all of her other family, cousins, aunts, and uncles were all still in Belgium. And as far as me and my sisters knew, and my brothers, if they cared, that was all black and white family. Like, it must, it does rain there a lot, but in the photos of our family, it just looked dismal and dreary, and everything was just dowdy and awful. And my mom wanted to take us to meet the family, and so I was about 23, maybe older, 24, and I got to go on that trip, paid for by Mom, because she won the lottery, and she took her daughters. And I'll tell you, we got off the plane, and they were in living color. There were 16 relatives to meet us at the airport.
Oh my gosh.
They whisked us off to a cafe in the town square with church bells ringing, and everybody, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody's drinking beer and having little tiny hors d'oeuvres. And it's like, where are we?
What is going on? Yeah.
So while I was there, I interviewed for a job with it's a missionary organization that creates books that missionaries use around the world, and they translated them into like 72 languages. So I interviewed there, and didn't think I would get hired. And I did, I got hired. And it was
Oh
like,
my
oh, now I
God.
have to go back to Detroit and quit my favorite job at the Detroit News.
Right.
This job in Belgium is going to be way cooler.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, come on. So yeah, 9 to 5, I got to illustrate books, painted covers for these books. I imitated the masters, the Dutch masters on the covers. So for me, it was a great education,
Right.
which, by
Yeah.
the way, we never covered. I did not
Oh,
go to art
yes.
school. I didn't
No,
go.
no art school. Well, yeah, I was like, there is, yeah, I wasn't sure. So that,
Yeah. When you read my bios and my websites, there are no colleges, there are no certificates,
yeah.
diplomas, there are no awards won, because who really wants to admit that you won an honorable mention for an illustration you did about hair transplants? Like, no.
Right.
Not
You're
even
like,
worth
let's skip this. Okay, so that's so interesting. So you really had that. Well, I mean, you had that education with your dad, but it also was
on the job.
something you wanted so much. Yeah, you spearheaded that through your life to
Every job
pursue.
that I ever got in Detroit taught me something new. Believe it or not, electricity companies have art departments, which is a bizarre thing, but I worked there and they made these, the little tiny things that you throw away that come in the mail with your bill. It's like, why are they sending me all this paper? Because they needed us to have a job.
Right, yeah.
So there were small illustrations and putting these things together, and there were really good artists that did other kinds of artwork, and I would watch them and ask a lot of questions. And at every place that I worked, of course, there were always artists who were way far ahead of me and who were willing to share their wealth of knowledge with me.
Right.
So I really learned on the job, and I do think I am a strong believer in God, and I think He gives you gifts from the time you're born. Some people are really good with blood, and they're scientists that want to be doctors, and I pretty well pass out at the sight of blood. So that's
So
not
that wasn't the path.
you
Yeah.
know. Some people like to fly airplanes, and you get me on an airplane like a cat in a bath. It's like, no,
No, the less.
I can't do this. And I try to, like, somebody's enjoying this. Somebody on the plane
Yeah,
is liking this.
somebody.
I've got to get that vibe.
Absolutely. But that makes sense. It was so art was, yeah, art was your
Art was
thing.
what I
And
did
that's
in
how.
high school. Well, even in middle school. By the time I got to middle school, they had me doing like caricatures of the teachers for the school newspaper.
Oh,
And
that's
by high
awesome. Yeah.
school, I was drawing all my friends' hair designs for the prom and their dresses, and you know stuff like that.
All
You
these
know,
things, but they're all these learning moments and they all take you to the next step. So it makes
they
sense.
do, they do. And anything I ever learned was just what you said. Whatever you're doing now, do it well, because it's probably the training that you need for what comes next.
No, I love that. I think that makes so much sense. Um, so, well, I guess since we're kind of talking about that jump from um, newspaper illustrations to children's books, so that's the how of how it happened. But how? What did you find that there were like was that an easy transition to make for you? Did you find that there were a lot of similarities between going from newspaper to going to children's books, or how were those processes different or good or bad or
I think each artist approaches doing their children's books maybe a different way, right? But because for the newspaper and then for the Associated Press, when I was doing information graphics, there's a huge amount of research. If the story is that a Russian Tupolev airplane came out of the sky and 230 people passed away, you needed to draw an exact Russian Tupolev 150-S or whatever it was.
Mhm.
So my whole many years of my career were involved in doing really solid research. And even in Belgium, doing the work for the missionary organization, it was a big cross-cultural thing, because certain cultures, you cannot show God, you cannot show Jesus, you cannot show deity. So, and other cultures, you cannot show anybody doing anything important with their left hand. You can never show the bottom of a foot. So it was very important to pay attention to details all throughout my career path.
Yes.
And so for the children's books, you know, I'm doing a book about an ant that lives on Cape Cod.
Yes.
But he lives at a certain place. It's Peter's Pond. And the author actually has his summer home there. And ironically, even though we lived overseas every summer, we would come home and go to Peter's Pond.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I knew it as well.
Yes.
So I went, before doing the book, I went and I took a lot of photographs. But you would see me, I had 2 golden retrievers at the time, and I brought the dogs. And we're on the beach. I'm on my belly with my camera, taking pictures of, you know, the rocks, the pebbles, the seashells, the weird weeds and grass that would grow there. So that when I'm doing the scenery in Alex the Cape Cod ant, it really is Cape Cod. You know, it really is Peter's Pond.
From an ant's perspective down there.
So between me and the author, we kind of went from a mouse's perspective.
Okay, yes.
If it was all really just an ant, all you're ever going to see are, you know, blades of grass that look like trees, you know, people's, like, not even their whole shoe, just like the ridge of the rubber on the bottom of their shoe, you know. So
right, but those are the liberties, one must take as an illustrator like that. So
my insects are on steroids.
yes, I think that makes sense. So how did you come across, like, so how, you know, you worked for this organization, so you illustrated alongside them, and what was the jump from kind of individually illustrating children's books, or like, how did you find your, you know, the author that you work with, or what was that process?
So after living overseas, I came back to America and still had friends overseas. And one of the girls that was a very close friend and sat at my table while I painted almost every day in Vienna, she had met a woman in England, in London, who had written a children's book and needed an illustrator, and did I want to? And yeah, I did. Yeah. And at the Plymouth Center for the Arts, there was an artist there who had already illustrated several books for, like, Scholastic and Harcourt and, you know, big publishers. And I was able to ask her all my questions, like, how much do I charge, and how do you get paid, and how do you do the process? And that woman, bless her heart, she just poured out everything and even gave me, like, a sample contract. And and we, you know, because I was in Massachusetts and she was in London and the publisher was in London, Zoom didn't exist, but we did whatever kind of telephone call where you had visuals. I don't even remember what it was in 2010.
What the process was,
But we had it so that we could, like this, see each other and show pictures. You mean like this, you mean like this, and I would scribble something, you mean like this. Because so on my bucket list, I would love to be an artist for a traditional publishing house. That hasn't happened yet. So I illustrate for local authors who get self-published. That's also called vanity publishing, but it is still publishing. You're still dealing with a place that's going to get you your ISBN number, lead you in the path to get your copyright. They're going to get you on their website, probably Barnes and Nobles and Amazon.com. So they're still going to provide some services. They give you different packages. It's just not, they're not going to pay you for your work. But then you still own your work. So that's kind of good. You know, as an author and as an illustrator, each person still owns their work. As an illustrator, in my contracts, I am giving them, for the price that I charge, they have the right to use this artwork in this book and anything related to this book. But after that, they'd have to either pay again or ask permission or something.
Communicate that way.
I get to hold on to the artwork because I don't know how many artists you know, but we don't like to give up our artwork very easily.
Absolutely, yes,
But now after 6 books, I've got so much artwork. So I like to have exhibits like I'm going to have at Greenville Library, where a lot of them will get on a wall where people can appreciate it. So it's not just sitting in a portfolio or,
Right.
you know, my husband had said when we moved to this, to America, back to America, he said, please don't make our house look like, you know, an art museum. And I said, you married an artist. Our son's an artist. Come on. And
What do you,
so the first year you know, whatever you want, dear, whatever you want. And then, you know, by year 3,
it's starting to go up. Yeah, slowly but surely there starts to be these. Well,
it,
I love that too, because I think it's such a cool part of your work and the way that you show your work is that not only does it exist in this book, in this volume, but people have the opportunity to see it in a different way. And, you know, you and I, me being someone who works in libraries and has an appreciation for children's books, like we see all these, you know, gorgeous illustrations. We have like an insight, but not everyone does. People who don't have children in their lives and see how special they are and see how, you know, how bright and exciting and like that connection to those stories. So I think that's such a cool part of how you bring your work into the world is having exhibitions like that with these framed pieces.
some children's books are so beautifully done that even without the words, they're like a gift. It's like you're given a beautiful coffee table art book. The artists, their work, their craftsmanship is just top notch. Um, I know so many, I just drool over their artwork. There's even on Facebook, there are like children's book illustrator groups that you can become.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, I'm on a whole bunch of those and just drooling over people's artwork. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, and some of them aren't even published yet because the road to being traditionally published is very long, tedious, filled with a lot of rejection, and a lot of people give up along the way. And I think now the idea is either find an agent, or if you're still like my age trying to get into it, find a smaller traditional house publisher that will buy your art or will buy your manuscript and will publish it and give you royalties afterwards and things. They do exist, especially we're between Boston and New York.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we have a good spot for that
really
exposure.
So after the first book, then you put work on your website. And then the next author found me on my website, and the following one did as well. I think it's important to also, as an artist, you have to market yourself, you have to package yourself. And I think, having an active website where people can really, it's like your portfolio out to the public.
Well, I thought, when I was viewing your work and, seeing all the things that you did, I feel like your website has so much personality too, that translates. So your website is so after even just meeting you like this, I'm like, of course, it makes so much sense. And you get it's so detailed and has so much, it just shows the scope, I think, of, how much work that you do and the different types of work that you do and the way you interact with it. So I think that makes a lot of sense how you would get to those next steps.
Well, my father, you have to, in life, people say things, they don't mean it to be a heavy burden for you, but they just say things. My father wasn't a man of many words, and he certainly was never insulting, never. He just said, if you're not going to design cars, how are you going to make a living? That's
right. Yeah.
I mean, a father can ask that, right? And so I thought, well, I'll just be well-rounded. I'll learn how to draw everything.
Right.
And so, and certainly the job at the Detroit News, I had to draw everything. I had to draw foot massages. I had to draw how to carve a turkey, and
all these,
a horrible bombing of a military base in Beirut, and weird things, weird combination of things, let's say.
Right. To give the scope of the news. And did you think that, when you were in that position, did you ever imagine yourself doing an aunt that lived in Cape Cod, or like was that so? I guess nothing is really a surprise for you if you've
Yeah,
you've really painted and drawn it all.
I think, you know, again, there are so many different kinds of artists. Then there's a big difference between a fine artist and a commercial artist. And I definitely fall in the category of commercial artists. So I make a living at doing my artwork. It is a service I provide. It's a talent I have that you don't have it, but you need it. And so
Right.
let's exchange.
Yeah.
Either you fix my teeth for free, want to do a book about dentistry, yeah, or you pay,
Absolutely.
right? Um, so where was I going with that? Oh, there are artists who definitely like to draw darker things, darker themes, darker things. Um, and even in children's books, you know, you can pick up a book and it just feels darker. Well, you know, I'm married to a journalist, and life, we see the sad, painful, ugly side of life every day, day in and day out. And for myself, I would rather paint things that might make you smile, that are cheerful, that are bright and colorful, because chances are you might be facing something really, really hard in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that is so, that's so real.
So I like drawing things that smile back at me while I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, let's see, I guess I'm curious. I know, I mean, we've talked a lot about illustrating books, but I'm also curious about like, I mean, I think so many of us read books, but we don't really think about the process of how a book comes to be in this way. So what is your, like, what's a little kind of overview of where you start when you are illustrating a book? So I imagine you get the story, and then what do you do after that?
And what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I share the screen now?
Oh yeah, go right ahead. Absolutely. Yeah.
I created a PowerPoint presentation about that because most children's book illustrators end up visiting schools or libraries and talking to kids about, you know, how they make a book.
How it works, right?
And I feel when I'm dealing with little kids, it's just better, instead of having an adult up there just yakking.
Right. Yes, you want
to show pictures. So this we made for this was me and a local author, Bill Burnett, W.M. Burnett, who's the author of all the Alex the Cape Cod Aunt books. So currently there are 2 Alex books that are published, one that's been on the desk since the beginning of COVID. I'll get into that, why it's still here. And then he also wrote this little tiny chewable book called Goodnight Plymouth, a little tiny board book for little kids. So let's see. So there's Bill Burnett. There's me at a younger age. And there's our hero, Alex. Okay. So remember, you were talking to kids on Cape Cod. So he lives on the corner. So this is where it begins. To create a book, first you need an idea that grows into a story. So here's the author. He's at his summer home, and there's a trail of ants coming. And this is how it really happened.
Really happened. Oh my
gosh. Coming into his home, and he asks the ants questions. Where do you live? Where are you going? That's a mighty big crumb, you know. So he starts to ask, and within asking this group of ants so many questions, he, you know, picks out one who's particularly charming. Wait a minute. So then you're the author, the guy with the idea. You should find a place to sit and write out your story. And here we are he's at Peter's Pond, looking across the pond at a sunset. Then you have to find an artist who can draw your ideas. So I don't know if you can see, there's his little ant is stuck in his little armpit there, and he's using a magnifying glass as he's doing a search on the internet for yours truly. So once you have your story and your artist, you have to have a meeting to talk about your characters, the location where the story takes place, the scenery, the weather, lots and lots and lots of meetings. For the artist, it's really important that I get inside the author's head, to understand their vision of their story, because I'm just being introduced to it. They've probably been carrying this story and these characters around for really 10 years seems to be an average
Yeah. Oh, wow.
before they actually do something. Then first, everybody does it differently, but I work on the characters first, because I think in these books that I've done so far, there is always a main character and his, little crowd of buddies. So I worked on Alex first. And you ask the questions, big, tall, tall, short, fat, skinny, old, young, real basic questions.
Right. Yeah.
And then Lotta is his best friend. So she was the next one that I worked on. And then Casey the cricket. So it's a threesome. They're the best. Every book introduces yet another friend, but these three do everything together.
Okay.
You can see myself down below. So sometimes I work best when I can kind of see what I'm going for. My exaggerated emotions are going to be even better if I really can visualize it.
Right.
And so if I don't have somebody in the house at that moment to take pictures of, I do sit in front of a mirror and take pictures of myself. So
to get that right.
My weird face turned into Casey's face in the book. Then I do my research, as we've talked about. And I spent the afternoon at Peter's Pond with my dogs taking photos of all kinds of things, just so that I knew what existed. And some of the things that you see, that pine cone shows up in a book, those weeds show up in a book, those little tiny itsy bitsy shells end up in the book, that grass is in the book, that background scenery, and that log, that driftwood, that's in a book.
Yeah.
This is the kind of ant. Now, I don't really like these ants, but I didn't want to do a black ant because then it's hard to do your highlights and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
This is like a fire ant, and they're nasty. They bite. But I like the brown colors, and I don't know. I thought his bum looked like a football, so I like that. Then I always paint the cover first, because that way you can start to advertise that you've got this book that's going to be coming out. And in my world, at that time, I used Facebook for all the advertising. Now I also have an Instagram account, so I would definitely use those two things in combo. Though I know a lot of young artists. So my son is an illustrator as well, and his whole world of friends are illustrators.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And when you ask me about favorite children's book illustrators, one guy, he's just got his second book out, is one of my son's best friends. His name is John Lauren. And his first book was Frankenstein Doesn't Wear Earmuffs. And it's a Halloween story, and you've got to get it in the library.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
It rhymes, and it rhymes well. It's not toe curling,
Yeah.
It's really done super. And my little grandson, who was last year 4 years old, I got it for him for Halloween. And he memorized the whole book. So I put it together as a video. His little voice, my daughter had just, done an audio of his voice.
Yes, like a recording.
And then I married it together with the pages, and we sent it off to the author, to John Lauren, and his heart melted.
Oh, that is so cute. That's perfect. I love that.
So anyways, then you have to design each page. And these, some people call these thumbnails. These are more like, 4 inches by 3 inches. And I have talked to the author by this time so much that I know what he wants for each page.
Yeah.
So I know, again, some illustrators will do as many as 12 of these rough illustrations per page.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, I'm not going to invest that much.
Yeah.
You can have 3 at most. But again, I'm not working with art directors at this point. Art directors will say, could you move that antenna just a little bit, like
right.
Not to diss any art director out there. Sorry. You are very important.
But you get that autonomy over the little details there.
Yeah. And honestly, when you look at the pictures in the book, this is the birthday surprise. The pictures pretty much stuck. I did not, again, some artists will enlarge their image and trace it onto their watercolor paper. I just redraw it on the watercolor paper.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Fast at drawing. So, and if you've created the character yourself, it's in you already. So
right, you're already have this idea.
Super quick. Oh, wait a minute. So anyways, there you go. And then I make a bunch of little tiny mock books in the process so that the author can see what's happening.
Yes.
So
Okay.
first, it's just the words so that he can see when now we turn the page, now we turn the page. This is too many words on this page, not enough here. But also, where we divide the manuscript at the first meeting,
Okay.
where does an image begin and end? That's pretty much how we divide it. Unless you're doing a book that is poetry or, rhyme, that's different. Then you choose the best image out of those 4 stanzas or whatever you're putting on a page.
Yeah.
But when I'm looking at a manuscript, I'll read it and say, okay, what is giving me a certain image? And then hopefully you end up with, 32 pages or a 16-page double spread.
Spread there. Yeah. Oh, no,
And then I start to paint. And up until we lived in this house where I do have a studio, I painted at the kitchen table.
oh my gosh, I
And
love
so
that look at it.
every day it was set the paints up, take the paints down, put the supper on the table, clear the supper,
Right.
put the paints up. It was a lot of work.
A lot of time
But,
spent in there.
and I want to say this to any artist that's paying attention. Don't ever feel that you need to have a studio in order to do your best work. Don't ever feel that your whole career is going to be installed because you don't have this room or this studio or this place to do stuff. Because you can draw on a train, you can draw at a coffee shop, you can, and up until, I've had a long career and a lot of it's been freelance. Up until 3 years ago, I did not have a studio.
Yeah.
The art supplies were stored in corners here and there, and I, pull it out.
Made it work. Yeah.
Just do it. Just do it. Don't let anything stop you. And there you go. Writing a children's book, I find, is a lot like running a marathon. All right. Doing a cartoon strip is a lot like running a 5 or 10K, right? Yeah. It's a lot of work. You push really hard, you get it done really fast, boom. But a children's book can take, from the time the author gives you the manuscript, it can still take about 9 months worth of work. Because you're doing other things in life as well. I always continue to teach and then paint. So I paint maybe 3 days and I teach 2 days, or sometimes I teach 3 days and I paint 2 days. Or sometimes I'll just say, I've got to get this book done. I'm not going to teach for this season until the book is done.
So this project, right?
Because I don't teach in the school system, must be said. Teachers who are in the school system, they're stuck.
Right. Yes.
They have to have energy at the end of the day, and they might not have it.
So, can you talk a little bit about where you teach and what you teach and?
So I started out teaching cartooning because you teach what you know. And I started teaching cartooning in Vienna, Austria, at the American International School, where my kids went and where I worked as a teacher's helper, a teacher's aide for 4th and 5th grade, which gives you a lot of fodder for books.
Oh, yes, yes.
And then I was a preschool teacher while I was in Vienna. And again,
oh my goodness, yeah. So
preschool.
That prepares you.
Delightful. Preschoolers do not know how to walk from point A to point B. They jump, they hop, they roll, they skip,
exactly. Yep.
They punch somebody along the way, they drive a cat or a dog, anything but just walk.
Do it, yeah.
And if you're going to do a book about 3 and 4-year-olds, you really should, your characters should not be sitting still.
Absolutely. No, that's so real. They do everything fun.
They do. They do. So anyways, so when I came back to America, some jobs that I thought I would be just absolutely perfect for all shut down because we had the recession in 2008, and that happened before we came home in 2009. So nobody was really hiring. So I thought, well, after about 3 months of trying and not getting anything, I walked into the Plymouth Center for the Arts, which was up the road a piece, and chatted with the nice artists that were there that day. And they found out that I loved to teach cartooning to teenagers. And they thought I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's a really good thing. All I can think of is like a one-eyed monster. but that's not what I mean. I mean, just like I was a freak. But
Yeah,
a
they
good
were like, what are you talking about?
a good thing, because nobody likes to teach teenagers, they said. It's like, no, I really, really like to. So they signed me up right away. And for about 8 years, I only taught teenagers because I was afraid to teach adults. And I didn't know, adults come with expectations and they know, okay, I've paid so much for a class.
Right.
It's kind of like, impress me.
Yeah.
And they know if they're being taught or if they're just being shooed into a room and, just do something, right? Whereas kids, you can shoo them in a room and let them just do something and they're happy as a clam. Give them a cookie. I make homemade cookies. They love it. They come
It's
back.
perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
So anyways, what I loved to teach, one of the best experiences I had as a 12-year-old kid was that there was a summer art program and the art teacher took us out of the building to draw just what was out there. So we went to like a deserted train station and did the building and,
Oh, how cool.
we would draw cracks in the sidewalk. I mean, just weird stuff, just so you're not in the building
In the
drawing
same
something
place.
that you
Doing. Yeah.
And I wanted to bring that experience to kids. So I developed a series of camps at the time that were just under the umbrella out and about. So one was by the sea, and Plymouth is right on the ocean. So 5 days we would go each day to a different place on the ocean and draw, paint, photograph, whatever we saw. Then one was the Secret Garden around Plymouth. There are some beautiful gardens. We went to those. One was down on the farm. We went to different farms. One was it's all about the food, because in my mind it is all about the food. And I took kids to different restaurants, ice cream shops, a farmer's market, and we would
that's so
go and paint
awesome.
whatever is there.
Yeah.
So but also for the teenagers, I do paint people realistically fairly well, and that's from just years and years and years and years and years of doing figure illustration. So I would teach figure illustration to the kids, using them as models, fully dressed, but as models. So they're drawing their peers. Pen and ink illustration, basic drawing. I'm more about teaching skills than I am about teaching an experience. But that said, for a number of years on the Cape, I was teaching homeschool classes, and the Plymouth Public Library loved my classes, and we would paint. It's like teaching to the test. We would paint to the exhibit. So we did an exhibit about music and musicians. And so each kid had to do a painting of their favorite musician and then their favorite instrument. And they were large, like 20 by 24 inch acrylic paintings. So I was teaching them acrylics. I was teaching them how to draw and paint people. Can't teach them color theory because I don't know. It's like you look at something, it's a color.
Right. You're like, this is it.
It's next to another color.
Yeah.
My son, if he ever hears this, he's just going to freak out. But I am taking classes at Rhode Island School of Design now to fill in the gaps, because there are many. So anyways, a couple of years ago, I started teaching adults, and they actually enjoyed my kind of Sesame Street way of teaching. And I teach them the out and about thing. And so basic drawing, and I've loved seasonal botanicals. We've done a whole year's worth of flowers week by week.
Amazing. Yeah.
And wildlife. This guy, wait a minute. Every now and then as a teacher, I finish something. Mostly I don't finish something.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That was a watercolor painting that we worked on in wildlife illustration. So yeah, that was the other thing. I'm not really a watercolor aficionado.
Okay, yeah.
Taken a couple of watercolor classes, and I've done a few watercolors. And I had a lot of students who wanted to paint with watercolors, but they were afraid.
Okay.
And some of the classes at Plymouth Center for the Arts are top-notch watercolor classes with top-notch, top-of-the-line artists. The man who's the president of the New England Watercolor Society teaches watercolor there.
Oh, how cool. Yeah.
So I taught a class on Zoom last year called Super Simple Watercolors, where we did, just like my basic drawing class, take one object. It's going to be round this week. So it's going to be an apple. We're going to paint that apple and we're going to experiment. And then, you know, next week it's going to be something square. Next week it's going to be something shiny. Just
Yeah.
one thing, so that you can get the feel of the watercolor, so that then you can go to Tony's class,
Right.
whatever he's doing, which is amazing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else? I like to teach what I know.
Yeah.
Hello. So 2 years ago, I was gifted an iPad Pro. My son does all of his artwork now digitally
Oh,
using an
okay.
iPad Pro and the app Procreate.
Yeah.
So I had been doing digital art back in the mid 90s when I was working for the Associated Press. But that was the grandmother of anything anybody's using now. So when you would draw an illustration, you would draw a sketch in Sketchbook, scan it,
Mhm.
bring it up, and click your mouse, click and drag,
Into
click
it.
and drag, click and drag, click and drag, making shapes, making curves, and filling them in. Well, Procreate is really just like having a sketchbook with any kind of implement you would like. You can do
Tool
pencil
or,
sketch, you can
yep,
do pen and
tool
ink, you can do
color.
watercolor, pastel, gouache,
It's all there
airbrush.
for you. Yeah.
So I started to be on a learning curve. My son gave me 5 hours of free lessons. To give you an idea how good my son is, he's illustrated for Disney. He's
Oh,
created a
wow.
toy line for Hasbro. He has been the person who's updated, remade video game characters like Spyro, Crash Bandicoot.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Yeah.
right.
So
He
these
did
big time. Yeah.
Sonic for Netflix.
That's so cool.
And Procreate, the people who made the app
Yeah.
Procreate that a lot of us artists use, they have had my son go to different countries to teach artists over there to do a little seminar on how to use
Yeah.
Procreate. So what better tutor or mentor?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You had it. Yeah.
But for years he tried to teach me things in Photoshop, and it was like, I don't know, trying to teach a rock. So um, I don't know, it all clicked. I don't know why.
That. Yeah.
I just got addicted to my iPad and started creating artwork right away for jobs. For the
Oh,
Plymouth
wow.
Public
Yeah.
Library was one, and a woman who runs science camps was another. And then now my latest puzzle, I also illustrate puzzles. I've got two that are out there that are just my paintings. Then my other street art ends up on two or three other
Oh, cool.
puzzles.
Okay. Yeah.
But then I did one just this, and it's hopefully going to come out for Christmas this year.
Oh, that's so
And
awesome.
it's the Feast of Seven Fishes. So if you're an Italian American and you have anybody in your family or your neighborhood that's Italian, this is a puzzle for you.
This is the puzzle. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh. And how did the puzzles come to be? Like, where did that come?
In life, you know, they say it's who you know, not what you know. And in life, some of the best things that have come my way have all been through somebody who knew me
Yeah.
in another way. So
Right.
about 30 years ago, we lived in Massachusetts for a little while, and my husband went to the bank and bumped into a classmate, Julie Ricker at the time, and now Pritchard. And she had an advertising agency, and she was looking for freelance artists to help her get her stuff done. And
Okay.
my husband said, "My wife is a freelance artist. She's pregnant right now." But anyways, as soon as I had that baby, I started working for her freelance. And that was ages ago, 30 years ago. And then
Yeah.
my husband and I took off. We went overseas. We lived there for 16 years.
Right.
I'm in Plymouth and I'm teaching in Plymouth. She ends up with her family buying a condo in Plymouth for an extra summer home kind of place.
Yeah.
And she went into the Plymouth Center for the Arts, saw the summer camp flyer up, and it said Terry Kole is one of the teachers. And she said, "This can't be the same Terry Kole. She's
Yeah.
over
She's
me."
like, what are the odds?
So I'm teaching a cartoon class to a bunch of kids. And at the very end of class, this whole family walks in, and it's Julie, her husband, and her grown kids. They're all grown up. It's like, holy
A
cow.
blast from the past. Yeah.
And she was just starting out this puzzle company called Dashing Dan. And now she's got maybe at least 24 puzzles, I think, that are on the website. So I talk about she never expected there to be a pandemic and that people would
Right.
be desperate for
Yeah.
puzzles.
Looking for things like exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time. She had started it before the pandemic, and then the pandemic came, and I think she's had to reprint
A
several of
lot.
her
Yeah. Because so many
puzzles.
things. Yeah.
So
Well, they're
yeah,
beautiful. So I don't, that makes so much sense. That's such a cool thing. But I love that. I mean, I think that really is how it works. You know, you meet someone, you know, cross paths with someone at one point, and then years later, something, you know, it's so serendipitous and
it is.
things just come together and happen that way. And beautiful things happen as a result of that. So
Yeah.
that's so special. Um, well, I guess we might want to be wrapping up our interview, although there's just so much to talk about. So it's hard to do. But I guess I'm gonna kind of combine my last few questions. And you know, you mentioned a few things, you know, if you're an artist and you're listening to this, you know, but is there any other, like, is there any advice in particular that you would give to a young artist or someone just starting out?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I- Now, there will be a time in life when you should say no, but as a young artist, say yes more than you say
Yeah.
no. And I want you to know you're worthy of being paid at least minimum wage
Mhm.
um, for projects that people are going to ask you to do.
Yeah.
And so you should not be ashamed at all or afraid to say, I would love to do that if you wouldn't mind paying me. What is it now? Is it 12? I know it's going to be 15 an hour.
Right. Yeah.
Let's say in Rhode Island, it's 11 or $12 an hour. At least get that.
Yeah.
But if you're still in school and you're still trying to like even build a portfolio of what you're doing,
Right.
at school, if somebody needs a poster, make the poster, don't charge. You know,
Yeah. Kind of get
somebody
in
wants
there.
you to design a costume, do it. If somebody's got a wild and crazy character and story that they want to develop, work with them, so that you can try things out, so that you can
Yeah.
experiment. Um, if you're further along in the art world, um, I would say get yourself on Instagram and create a portfolio website.
Mhm.
There are certain websites that really are strictly portfolio ones, but
Yeah.
honestly, nowadays artists are using Instagram. They're not posting, oh, I went out with my boyfriend. They're
Right.
just posting, you know, I did this, you know, let's see, hashtag, let's see, this September. And there are always these art challenges on Instagram. So it was Storybook September. So people did Snow White one week, they
Oh,
did
that's
The Hobbit another week, they did no. I'm trying to think of all the ones I've been trying to follow it. It's all the cool kids. It's
yeah.
you know, it's not like I'm not the likes of me that I want to, but I am taking a class right now in children's book illustrations, and I want to do the homework. I want to take it seriously. I want to learn. I want to get better. Um, so I don't have the extra time to do those, but you know,
The
they'll have a
time.
mermaid drawing contest, or they'll do a hashtag Toon Me, where you put half your face is a photograph, half your face is a cartoon. Get on
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Instagram as a young artist and just look around and start collecting artists, you know,
Right.
start following
Yep.
artists.
Interacting and making
Yeah,
friends. Yeah.
yeah. What else would I want to say? Well, it has done me well to be well-rounded and to learn not just pencil illustration, but pen and ink.
Yeah.
Back in the day, doing final color up in marker, but no, not so much. But to learn watercolor, acrylic, gouache, um, and when you can, I mean, the cheapest way to do the whole tablet thing and do digital art is to get
Yeah.
an iPad.
Mhm.
Get You don't have to get the Apple Pencil. You can get another, maybe a $30 stylus instead of a
Yeah.
$100 stylus. And then if it's a like a Samsung reading Kindle tablet.
Yeah, like
That's
a,
an iPad. You can get an app called Ibis Paint X.
okay, yeah. So
And
that's
then
kind of
when
like a
you have an
appropriate.
iPad or a cell phone or an iPhone or MacBook,
Yeah.
I highly recommend getting Procreate. It's $9.99 one time only.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So
You do so much in it.
so I guess, I mean, to close out, well, and we'll link your website and we can link your Instagram, but is there anywhere else like viewers can find your work? Or I mean, you mentioned a couple upcoming projects and we got a little sneak peek at the puzzle, but is there anything else that is to look forward to?
No, the right now the books that are available are on Amazon.
Yeah.
Except I don't think Goodnight Plymouth is. And Goodnight Plymouth is really a cute little book.
And that's the board book.
That's the board book for little chewable babies.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yes.
Yes, and I have to open. I mean, we travel through Plymouth at twilight till dusk,
Yeah.
but some of my favorite pictures again are at the end of the book. So that was my trick was plan a couple of favorite pictures for the end of the book so that you
Yeah.
want to get there.
It's the surprise and it's the, oh, look at them. Oh my goodness.
But I also like my flying Mayflower. So I've done the Mayflower maybe 10 different times for 10 different jobs. And
Okay, yeah.
and you get tired of doing the same thing, right?
Right, yeah.
So I made it fly this time. So
Oh, that's
Mayflower's
awesome.
coming in for a landing, you know?
But that's, you switch it up. You have to
It's fantasy.
adapt to be, absolutely. Oh, that's so awesome. Okay, so that is out there and we can find your books.
Yeah, and if you go to Plymouth, the puzzles, well, you can find the puzzles on dashingdan.com.
Okay, yeah.
But if you go into the Plymouth, actually, all of I went to the New Bedford Whaling Museum and my puzzles were there. It's like,
oh, that's so cool.
Julie's everywhere. So there are unusual places that you'll find them, but anywhere up and down the east coast of Massachusetts and onto the Cape, you know, Alex will be there, Goodnight Plymouth will be there, and the Wampanoag puzzle and the Mayflower puzzle, and you know, so.
That's amazing. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Well, we're so excited to have you show your work at the library. And I know everyone is looking forward to it and we get some color on the walls and it's a cool part of it. So thank you so much.
When the pandemic ends and we don't have to be worried about being in the same confined place, we could do a book thing at the library. And
yeah, I think everyone would love that. Yeah, what a cool crossover between, you know, the art part of the library, the art exhibition, the children's room, you know,
with the kids,
everything.
I love to read the books to the kids, but I also have them draw Alex.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Step by step, Alex and Lotta and Casey. We do a step by step how to draw them, and oh, they're so cute.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah, that's so sweet.
So
all the different versions and the different little details. That's so perfect. Yeah, we would love that. That would be so fun.
Oh, thank you, Allie, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we didn't even, I mean, I know there's so much more we didn't even get to talk about, which I anticipated because you have such a huge portfolio and a huge experience. But that just means we'll have to chat again sometime.
That's right.